Hello, welcome back. I'm Robin Vincent and welcome to the Molten Music Technology Labs here in a remarkably sunny Norfolk. Today we are looking at Imageline's FL Studio 12. It's a remarkable and funky piece of software, but I've sort of looked down my nose and dismissed Fruity Loops as kind of a cool little loopy piece of software, but I've not really given it any of my time. I did hear of people using it and being creative with it when it evolved into FL Studio, but I haven't really taken it seriously. I was encouraged to check out version 11 because it had some sort of multi-touch features in it, but you know, they weren't really very good and the interface looked like it hadn't changed for a decade, and so, you know, I gave it half a minute and then kind of moved on. So it's from a position of sort of poorly disguised cynicism that I yet again step into the immense greyness that is FL Studio. However, I have a feeling that there's some cool stuff going on in here, so I'm going to put my prejudice aside and try to give FL Studio 12 a fair shake. So let's see if I can get to the bottom of what's cool and fabulous about this strange and eager piece of music production software. I'm just going to interject here because it turns out that I had loads to say about FL Studio 12, too much in fact to contain in a single video. So what I've done is that I've pulled out all of the stuff about multi-touch and the Surface Pro 3 and I've stuck that in a different video. So this video is the main review about the guts of the program, about running it on a desktop, about patterns, about the mixer, the playlist, the routing, the synths, the effects, all of that sort of stuff is in the main review here. And all the stuff about multi-touch and running it on the Surface Pro 3 is in another video, of which there's a link down in the description. Okay, on we go. When you're used to practically any other piece of DAW software, the layout of FL Studio is a bit disorientating. And I find myself getting annoyed quite quickly. However, let's remember my promise to be sort of, you know, positive and proactive about all this, and let's open a project and see if we can get something groovy to happen. Okay. Well, nothing seems to have changed, but I do have this rather interesting pixie over here, sort of bobbing about, and I've got some what appear to be Japanese lyrics. Well, let's press play. Right, the pixie's dancing. Okay, well, so I've got a banging bit of techno, which is nice. I've got a kind of a spectrograph thing going on here, and I have a dancing pixie. What could be better than all that? So, well, how about we push some of the buttons and let's see what happens. Ah, okay. The pixie's really going for it now. Now that's a bit more familiar. It's like an arrange page, so that we understand that a bit more. Not sure what that is. Piano roll. Oh, look. No, oh, that's the browser. Mixer. Okay, now we're talking. Okay, what's this? Oh, wow. Okay, well that's a bit more like it. Fruity Loops seem to have it's opened itself up to us with a lot of interesting stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and look at a bunch of videos. I'm going to open the documentation, root around, so that I can have a much better idea as to what I'm talking about. Because at the moment, I'm just messing around. So yeah, let's cut it here, and I'm going to find out what this is all about, and we'll come back and hopefully I can share my findings with you. And we're back. So, having absorbed all that information, we're going to start by opening a brand new project and and get stuck in. So the first thing you have to do is unlearn everything you think you know about DAW software, because FL Studio just works differently. The normal sort of linear connections of audio tracks and MIDI tracks just simply don't exist in here. And instead, FL sort of works on this fluid concept where you can stick anything, anywhere. The reason that the playlist window has sort of a gazillion tracks already set up is because they're not tracks at all. It's just a grid onto which you paint your stuff. They probably call it tracks just so that it's sort of not completely disorientating to someone coming from another DAW. The tracks have no relation to the mixer. Instead, the mixer deals with whatever it is that's making the sound, whether that's MIDI or audio. And then the final thing to understand is that because these aren't tracks, you don't actually record into them at all. You record into patterns and into clips. And then you slap those into the playlist for playback. All you really get with a new project is this little box called Channel Rack. You may have other things open too, like the playlist or the mixer, which you can easily pull up with these toolbars at the top. But this is what we need to concentrate on to start with. What you seem to get is like an analog drum machine with kick, clap, hat and snare, and these buttons that you can turn on or off with the left and the right mouse button. And if you hit the little play button here, so in the old days, in previous versions of FL Studio, that little box was called the sequencer. And that makes a lot more sense actually than Channel Rack. However, it's evolved into something much more than just being a sequencer. The Channel Rack is actually sort of the beating heart of FL. It's where everything lives, everything is placed, everything that makes sound comes out there. It's essentially where you make your music, where you create your patterns. And if FL Studio was just this window, you would find it a perfectly adequate place to make music. And that's kind of what Fruity Loops used to be. The key to unlocking FL Studio is understanding how the Channel Rack relates to patterns, how patterns relate to the playlist, and how that relates to the mixer. So let's look at patterns. So you may notice at the top in the middle we have this display that says pattern 1. This refers to what's in the Channel Rack. So this here is pattern 1. If we change to pattern 2, we can create a different pattern. And I can swap between them like that. FL likes to give you half a dozen ways of doing the same thing, and it supports whatever workflow you want to use. You want to select patterns from a menu? Yeah, I can do it over here. Look, pattern 1, pattern 2. You want to change it by rolling the mouse? Yeah, I can come over here and I can roll the mouse wheel and that changes patterns. You want to do it with a right click? Yeah, you can do it with a right click. You can then go on to create as many patterns if you like, and if you were to link them all together, you would be creating a song. And that's the very essence of FL Studio. Obviously, this is not all about just a 4-voice drum machine. There's a lot more to it than that. And if you press the little plus button at the bottom of the Channel Rack, you'll find all the sort of included plugins. Now, there's a bunch of stuff in here. There's synths, samplers, patcher things, controllers, drum stuff, visual stuff, MIDI stuff, and all sorts of things which either generate sound or routes it about. But of course, this is not the only way to add something to the Channel Rack. No, you can bring it in from the plugin browser over here. So we go synths, thing, drag, drop. You can also right click over here and put open a new channel, and that sticks another one in. You can go to the plugin picker and double click something, and that puts it in. The plugin picker is particularly awesome. I love the way that all these thumbnails of synths just kind of zoom onto the screen and let you pick something. You know, all the GUIs sort of swish into view and they're all animated and exciting and ready to go. Let's choose something simple, like the 3X oscillator, the 3X OSC. I don't know what that means. Anyway, we'll drop that in here. Now, to start playing with this, let's just put a regular sound in. You could, of course, put notes in here. But that's no good, you don't want that because this is an instrument, so you want something like a piano roll. So if you click this button up over here, you then get a piano roll version of the sequencer. And in here, let's turn this down a sec, I can stick in notes just like you would with anything else. And then you hit the play button. And it's become part of the pattern that you had currently selected. Is that good? It's possibly, but what we probably want is it for it to be in its own pattern. You may also have noticed that because some of the notes have gone outside the initial sort of single bar loop that was in the drum machine, that it now doesn't loop in the same place. It's now sort of extended itself. And FL doesn't really know how big you want the loop. It just keeps on going provided that there is stuff to play, and then it will loop at the end of that bar. But if we go back to the analog style view, what you can do is then drag over to the right and you'll see that it reveals a whole load more steps. And actually it could be as long as you like, as long as you keep recording into the piano roll, into a pattern or whatever, you can extend that as far as it needs to be. But really at this point we have to start talking about the playlist so that we understand what it is we can do with patterns and why all of that's important. So initially the playlist looks just like any other sort of arrange or project page, but it's actually an open grid onto which you paint your patterns as clips. So let's do something basic to demonstrate that. So let's start with a simple pattern again. Pattern 1, and then let's go to pattern 2. And now I'm going to drop in a synth like the Sawyer to do a bit of a bass line. I've got my MIDI keyboard set up, so I'm just going to record directly into it. When you hit record, you get this kind of weird yet friendly notice asking you, what would you like to record today? Oh, that's very kind of you to asking. What sort of options do I get? Well, I can record audio into the Edison audio recorder. I can record audio into the playlist as an audio clip. I can record automation and score. Or I can record everything, or it can show me more help. Now I'm going to assume that automation and score is the best bet here, and it is. But it's really weird that there's no like record MIDI option. I don't understand that, but we're going to hit that and see what happens. Okay, it lasted just as long as the single bar of the pattern that we're in, which is fine. But now that this is part of the drum pattern, so if I change to pattern 1, it disappears. Pattern 2, there it is. So I didn't really mean to do that. I didn't mean to put it into the same pattern as the drums. And there's a few things I can do about that. There's an option where you can just split every single channel into its own pattern, which is cool, but I want to keep those drums together. So in this case, I'm just going to right click and go cut. I'm then going to create a new pattern and then go right click, paste. And now I have a different pattern that just has the bass in it. Groovy. So now I have two drum patterns and a bass pattern, all independent, but I'm going to want to play these together, aren't I? Okay, so to do that I need to open the playlist. You can open the playlist from a dozen different places, but it's not important. Here it is. So let's choose pattern 1. Let's take our pencil tool and let's stick that on. Pop. There's pattern 1. Now it doesn't matter what track you stick it on. It's completely freeform. So I could put one there. I could put one there. It doesn't matter. I could put two together. It doesn't matter, you know, where you put them. So let's put one over there. Let's get pattern 2. We'll stick one of those there. I guess it kind of makes sense to keep them together just so you know what the heck and all's going on, but it's not important. Let's then take pattern 3, which is our bass line, and I'm going to take the little paint tool here and I'm just going to slap that on like that, so it goes all the way along. Now let's set this playing and see what we've got. Ta-da! Right, let's add another synth to our awesome piece of music. And there she blows. So to record this new synth, to create its own sort of pattern and piano roll, I can record directly into the channel rack. The only problem with that is that I don't get to hear everything else at the same time because I'll be in pattern mode. So what I want to be able to do is to record into the playlist. So you do that by creating your empty pattern and then sticking it in the playlist. Let's drag it out to make it as long as we want it to play for, and then we hit record in song mode. Hit play and we should be off. And there it is. It doesn't show you what you're recording as it goes along, it sort of appears at the end, which is a little bit annoying, but there we go. So here's our piano roll of our newly recorded piece. And although it looks like a MIDI track, it looks like I've recorded into a track, I haven't. It's just a pattern, and I can stick this anywhere. I can make it smaller, so it's just the first bit, and then I can create some more because it's just a pattern, and I can paint more patterns in, and I'll paint that one over there. Then set that playing. Oops, no, set that playing. Like so. So do you see how things are starting to build up? How you're creating these patterns and then painting them on the playlist. Every time you record some notes, you're sort of adding a further pattern to your library with which you create your song. And although it's taken quite a bit of explaining to get here, it is actually devastatingly simple. There's a dizzying array of tools and options in the playlist. You can do anything to everything. Everything has its own menu, sort of deeper down and digging and all that sort of thing. So it's very easy. If you right click something here, for instance, you can rename it, you can change its color, so you make everything as beautiful or as important as you like. You've got different preset names you can put onto patterns. Oops. And the right click always deletes stuff, and that gets me all the time. I'm constantly accidentally deleting stuff because on this clip here, for instance, the right click does delete it, but also the right click in the right place, so in this little corner here, that actually brings up a menu which is a very important menu. You can also change what the clip contains, because I've used sort of the term clip and patterns a little bit interchangeably, and it's quite important that you don't, because they are different things, because patterns remain constant the entire time. So when you edit a clip on here, because these are called clips, you are not changing the pattern inside it. You are just resizing the space in which the pattern plays. However, if you edit the pattern, so whatever this is the drum, so let's go for pattern 3. If I bring up the piano roll, oops, and I change those notes around and put a few more in, it changes it in every single pattern. So the pattern remains constant, which is really, really cool. And it's also really annoying, because if you're just wanting to change something in one place, you'll find that suddenly it's changed all over the place. They've thought of that though. So what you do is you go to your little right click menu and you go make unique. And then this becomes a whole pattern all by itself. So this is now a different pattern to this. So I can change this one. And the others are no longer changed because they're a different pattern. So looking at some of these tools across the top, you have the pencil tool, the on and off tool, the left click on, right click off. You've got a paint tool, so if I select something smaller, I can paint that in a little bit like that. A delete tool, which is completely superfluous because you delete with the right button on everything else. You've got a mute button, that's a bit more interesting. A slip button, and this allows you to change the position of the pattern within the clip, which is quite interesting. You've then got a sort of a razor blade or a goose head, depending on your point of view, and that allows you to cut stuff. Now you cut stuff slightly differently in FL. You click and drag, and then I can cut something in half. See, I've cut it like that. Let's try that again. Pop. As you click and drag, you can click and drag at an angle. Now I was initially a bit kind of weirded out by that. I wouldn't quite work out what that was about. But if you put you know, a bunch of patterns together in a bit of a line, like so, you can then do a cut across all of them, which gives kind of an interesting effect, if you see what I mean, in that all of these are now in a very nice sort of straight line, have been cut in a certain way, so I could get rid of all of those. And I've now got this nice sort of stepped edit, which is kind of weird. I haven't worked out why or how I would use that, but it's a tool I've never seen before, so that's always good. If you right click with the cut, it then just pulls the outside of a pattern to that line, like so. Do you see that? Yeah. Then got a selection tool. You select a load of stuff, that's easy. And you've got a magnifying tool as well, where you can zoom into things. But actually, for zooming around, you just use a modifier key. So use Control, and then I can roll the mouse like that, and it goes in and out beautifully, or hold Alt and it goes up and down beautifully. It's just lovely, that. Just really, really nice. And finally on this thing, you've got like a solo play button. So if you hold it over a clip, it plays it by itself. Which is very handy. One last thing of note is that whenever you use the pencil tool, it will draw whatever you touch last if you don't manually select a pattern. So if I click on this pattern here and then click over here, it will produce the same thing. If I tap on this one and produce that, it'll throw that pattern onto the playlist. And that just kind of makes everything really, really fast, particularly if you're doing some editing. So for instance, if I wanted to create a bit of a build with some drums, I might take the pattern, let's take it over here a little bit, and sort of reduce it and continue to reduce it inside, so it creates a bit of a roll. So in something like Cubase, I would copy and paste and then resize, and then copy and paste and then resize. With this, I can just draw another one, resize it like that, draw another one, it's already that size, draw another one, it's already that size, draw another one, make that one smaller, oops, like so, zoom in very easily, draw another one, resize, draw another one, draw another one, draw another one. Do you see how quick that is? So fast. Right, staying in my crappy little project that I've created here, we're going to look at automation. Now, FL loves automation. You can do it anywhere and everywhere, and it's kind of given the same priority as any other clip. Pretty much every single knob and parameter in FL is automatable, and it's very, very easy to do. So for our synth here, our bass line that's going round, all I need to do is right click on the knob of interest, which in this case is cut off, and select create automation clip. I then get a clip in the playlist right what it actually appears in the next kind of available space in what I'm doing, because it's not connected to any piece of MIDI as such, it's connected purely to the synth. So I could put it anywhere, but it puts it in the loop that I'm doing at the moment. And within it, what you get is a nice little line. Oops. When you get a nice little line. Let's have a look at this a little closer. And you've got a start and end point. So that's very simple. In between you have a node which you can create a curve. hear that happening. If I right click over on the end point, it gives me a few options. So I've got smooth, I've got hold, I've got single curves, I've got double curves, stairs, smooth stairs, so kind of a ripple effect, pulse, and a wave. And you can go to awesome levels of sort of resolution on that to make it as crazy as you like. Now, of course, it's all very well having something which is a bit sort of automated like that, but you can also draw in freehand, and to do that you have to click on the world's smallest button that's called Step, and now my pen tool comes up and I can draw directly into it. I can then make it as absolutely as freeform as I want it to be. But that's not all, because automation clips can also be automated. If we double click the top of the automation clip, it brings up kind of a settings window, and within that there's an LFO. If we turn it on, we get a nice shape. If I right click the speed knob, I can go create another automation clip. And now I have one automation clip controlling the speed of the LFO on the other one. That's pretty awesome. I could then add another automation lane for the resonance here, but I can link that to an existing automation lane. So if I right click it and go link to controller, I then pick the automation lane I want to control it to here. Let's say that one, hit accept. And now the resonance is also being controlled by this same automation clip here. It's all sort of wonderfully bonkers what you can do with the automation. You can just automate everything. Synths. Let's have a look at the synths. There are around 23 different synthy generators, as they're called, in FL Studio, and they've sort of been built up over the years, and so there's sort of stuff that's been going for ages, which is still sort of fruity and interesting, along with more newer, up-to-date instruments, and you end up with this really sort of impressive arsenal of sounds. And there's a whole load of other stuff in here under things like Patcher or miscellaneous and MIDI that I don't really fully understand yet. But when you pull up the plugin picker, it just, you know, the sonic possibilities seem immense, and it's just such a lovely way of sort of looking around and choosing what it is you're going to play with next. VST support is also completely integrated, and it allows you to use pretty much all the same tools on any third-party VST plugin. You can include your third-party synths in the exciting plugin picker interface. So for instance, if I bring in the V station, there she is. If I add the plugin to the database, it'll then appear within one of the categories here. See, I've got V station here. So if I go to plugin picker, the V station is now inside as a little thumbnail, which is awesome. I love that. Automation is slightly different. It requires sort of one more click, really. And also, in routing stuff to an external controller, you use Fruity Loop's magic knob. Now the magic knob is at the top here, and when you put your mouse over it, it says multi-link to controllers. So I can turn it on, right click something like the frequency knob here, and then if I move something, like the controller over here, move the mod wheel, this is now controlling that knob. It's that simple. So if I set this playing again, cool. But I can do the same thing into a automation clip. So I can press my magic knob, click on what I want, and then if I right click the magic knob, create automation clip. And this has now created the automation for the knob. That's phenomenally easy. I love it. So let's talk about multi-timbral instruments then. How do you access those? If you're dropping one in here and you've got a channel for it, how do you access something which has more than one MIDI channel, like Contact or Omnisphere or something like that? Well, let's have a look. So let's load up Contact, and let's load up a couple of different things on different things. Let's stick an organ on there. Let's put a terrible saxophone on channel 2. So everything comes through on channel 1 normally, or is routed to the first MIDI channel. So that's our organ that we can hear. Now there's a very interesting way of dealing with this in the piano roll. Stick some notes in and you can hear it's the organ. Now in the top left hand corner here there's a little sort of colour palette, and within this you choose a different colour which is actually a different MIDI channel, and then you can write more notes into the piano roll on that MIDI channel. So let's select MIDI channel 2. Ooh. So you can see they're both being played. Now that's kind of strangely awesome, because I'm not entirely sure why you would want lots of different MIDI channels on one piano roll. I don't know. I mean, it's a creative solution to a kind of a strange routing problem. So yeah, you can do that, and there's 16 of those in there, but perhaps there's another way, and there is, of course. There's always more than one way to do things in FL Studio. So the other way of doing it is using a MIDI out plugin, which is here, and that can route any MIDI input to any MIDI output. So you load that up. You have to go into Contact and give it a port number, just so that we can link the two together. So I'll give them that port number 5, go over here, put this on port number 5, and there you go. I've got the connection on channel 1. I can then add another one of those, put that also on port 5, channel 2, and I've got my sax sound. So now, rather than creating a piano roll for Contact, I can create it for each one of these individually, like so. So it's at times like these, when you've got a load of patterns splattered around, you've got synths pumping away and automation going whoop, 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 that your thoughts sort of turn to mixing. Previous versions of FL have sort of suffered from having what you could call a really crap mixer. I mean, it's probably very functional. I mean, everything in FL Studio is very functional, but it appeared, to me at least, to be very sort of utility and kind of gets the job done, but is not exactly, you know, a creative sound blending, effect processing and mangling place. With FL Studio 12, that has all changed. Now feast your eyes upon the awesome greyness that is the new mixer. Now it may be grey, but it's also lovely. Look at all this sort of stretchy vectorness that it does. You have different ways of looking at it, different sort of views, if you like, going all the way back to how it used to look, which was a bit kind of like that, which was terrible. But what I find is about wide 3 seems to be generally what works for me. Now when you load up a load of synths and stuff, the mixer remains unchanged. It's unmoved by the new sounds that you've included into FL. And that's because there's no direct connection between the playlist, between the patterns, and this. Or at least there's no automatic connection. So instead you have to allocate the channel manually, directly from your device in the channel rack. Now by default, those 4 drum sounds, the kick, clap, snare and what's it, are automatically routed to the first 4 channels. So that's cool. But I've got a toxic synth in there, and it's routed purely to the master. Similarly, if we find my bass pattern, that's also purely just routed to the master. So what we actually want is each synth going to its own channel on the mixer, or at least That's what I want, being like a normal person. So there's, of course, multiple ways to do that. So you can open up the editor for the GUI for the synth, and at the top right you'll see track here. Now it's got an M on it, M for master. Now I can change this so it goes to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, track 5. Do you see the way that showed it on the mixer as well, which is quite neat? So now I have it going through channel 5. Lovely bit of metering. Now it's in there, but nothing in the mixer has changed. However, if I press this button here, this will assign the output of this to the first available mixer channel. So if I click on that, it's now put the name of the synth in there and coloured it slightly as well. There's a tiny little bit of colour behind the number 5. So this is now the Sawyer track, and it's labelled as such, which is great. The other thing you can do is select your thing in the channel rack and select a channel in the mixer, go down to channel routing and route selected channels to this track, like that. So now it's running through channel 6. Slight anomaly here is that channel 5 still says Sawyer on channel 5, even though now it's going to channel 6. I don't know why that is. I don't know why that doesn't reset to nothing now that nothing's going to it, but let's keep going. In either case, there's a keyboard shortcut which does all this actually much easier. So I can select a channel and press Ctrl L, and it's inserted there. Now there's plenty of room for sort of confusion here, partly because of that bit, but also because of the naming conventions. They're kind of a bit skewed in Fruity Loops, like they're not really quite sure what to do with them. Because the mixer channels seem to be labelled as inserts, and yet they're referred to as mixer tracks. I mean, I guess because the channel rack over here, these are called channels, then I guess you can't call them mixer channels, but I think perhaps you should, because these are sort of words that people understand. And the mixer itself is simple and versatile. At the top you have a choice between a metering display or a nice sort of wave display, something like they've recently introduced into Cubase. That's nice. Then you've got pan and mute solo, which is all on the same button. Left click for mute, right click for solo. Oh come on, you can give us 2 buttons. Can't you give us 2 buttons? Then you have your fader knob here, which of course is what you expect it to do, volume up and down. And then at the bottom you get kind of some weird things to do with stereo. I don't know why they're all here, but to do with stereo separation, swapping left and right channels, and reversing polarity. Underneath that you've got an ARM disc recording button, which is kind of record enable I suppose, and then the routing you've got at the bottom. In between there sits these inserts, which is on the far right. On the far right you have, it's kind of like an inspector for the mixer channel, and at the top you can specify the audio input, so you can select stereo or mono inputs from your ASIO driver or your audio interface or whatever it is you've got running audio through. At the bottom you've got audio out. If nothing is selected there, then it just routes through the master, whatever the master is you've got set up. And then you have these 10 effect slots in between, which give you access to the gazillion plug-in effects that they have included in FL. In here you've got controllers, whatever they do, reverbs, distortions, dynamics, filters, flanges, gain, miscellaneous, so weird stuff I suppose, and also visual things as well. I guess that comes back to our dancing pixie from before, who knows. Or again you can open them from the plug-in picker here, which is always a joy to use. The routing at the bottom is extraordinarily versatile. You can take it anywhere. You just click to the channel you want it to go to and boom, it's there with a nice little send knob. So if 10 inserts is not enough for you, you can go through one channel to the next one, to another one, to another one, to another one, and so on, and create as many as you like. Spider! You can also group stuff very easily. Put stuff together like that using Control, create a group, call it something like vocals, and it creates, it's got a little mouth icon to say that it's a vocal. That's funny. Right, so then it creates this group. It puts these separators down the side so you can easily see that group, which is really nice. And you can put separators anywhere to organize your mixer in a much better way. You can also put anything you like over to the left or over to the right. So dock to the left, bump, and then that channel is now over on the left hand side. No matter what else we do in the mixer, it's always going to be available. You can also do the same on the right hand side. That's awesome. That's really good. I love the way that you can mix because it's a mixer, yeah. Where you can mix and match where things go, set out where everything is. It's extremely adaptable, so you can control wherever you want anything to be very simply and route them all over the place. I've never quite seen anything quite so easy and quite so much like it. Does that make sense? The only disappointment to me really in the mixer is the lack of colour. I mean, it's got to be possible to bleed the colour at the top here, which is nice. It's nice having that colour there, but to bleed that down through the channels just so it gives a better visual indication of where you are and what you're doing. Because I just kind of get grey blind and lose what's going on, and it gets a bit samey, and a bit of colour would really sort that out. But compared to previous versions of Fruity Loops, the mixer is just light years ahead. It's a really fantastic addition. I get the feeling that recording audio is not really FL's favourite thing. It likes dealing with samples and dragging those sorts of things into clips and pasting them around the playlist. But live recording is a slightly different matter. But before we get into that, it's worth mentioning another feature, which is what FL calls disc recording, which I guess is a Fruity Loopism for bouncing or mixing down tracks. If you record enable a channel, so let's do our drums and our bass. I forget which one bass is on now, over here, number 8. And then go to the mixer's menu, you'll find disc recording, render to WAV file. And this enables you to render any channel or selection of channels into an audio file, which then appears as a clip in the playlist. This can be a pattern, an entire song, a selection of patterns, whatever you like. I have heard people say that this is how you freeze tracks in FL, but it's not really the same thing, because when you use a freeze function in another DAW, it automatically unloads the synth and keeps all that editing in place and can then undo that at a later date. This isn't the same, this is just bouncing. So it's not really the same thing. I wouldn't call it freezing, but I guess it's something that you could use to accomplish something similar. So when you click on render, it asks you what you want to do, full song or pattern. Let's go for the full song. Leave a bit of a tail because there might be reverb or effects going on. Yeah, that's fine. You've got a whole load of formats and stuff that you can choose from, and then just hit start. Whoop, gives you a lovely little bleep, and you're done. Let's have a look at that playlist and see whether we can see what happened. Yeah, look at that. See, each of them have been rendered individually, which I didn't specify, and I could probably select that to be if I go back to the mixer, had I done that by record enabling the master, then it would have been a mixdown. But because I individually clicked on the record enable on each channel, it's done each channel individually, which is pretty cool. So so there it all is. So I can now unload my synths and have the audio going by itself. Of course, nothing has changed in the mixer because I haven't told any of the new audio clips where they're supposed to go. So let's record some guitar. So I'm going to start over here, channel 5, because I know 1 to 4 has already got those first 4 drum what's-it-ons. I'm going to go to the bit on the right, and I'm going to select an input. Now I believe I'm going in analog number 2. There I go. So I am coming in on insert number 5. Insert number 5, channel number 5, track number 5. I have no idea what to call it. So that's good. Don't need to set an output because it's just coming out of the master. That's fine. It's become live. It's monitoring automatically. And actually there's no obvious way to turn the monitoring off. And the only way to not monitor, so if you wanted to direct monitor through your audio interface so that you don't experience any latency at all, and obviously you don't want to be running any effects, you have to unroot it, like so. So now it's not routed to the master. So essentially you have to destroy the routing in order to not monitor, which seems a little bit fierce, in my opinion. There could just be a button. There could just be a button. So let's have a look at some of these plugins. Or maybe it's more fun to bring up the picker and do it that way. Well, I certainly know that there is a guitar plugin called Hardcore over here. I can tell that because it looks like a pedal board. See, one of the joys of the plugin picker is that you can see what the heck anything is. So the whole thumbnail thing is awesome. And I believe that Studio One have just dreamt that one up as well. You've got all sorts of categories: reverb, distortion, delays, filters, flanges. I said that already, didn't I? But here they all are in their awesome gloriness. So I'm going to go to distortion, I'm going to go to the pedal board and whack that in there. Yeah, the pedal board, it's not bad. It's not the greatest thing I've ever heard by any stretch, but it's a bit sort of thin in sort of places, feels a bit bandaged, do you know what I mean? But it's got a bunch of interesting presets. Which aren't half bad, you know. So we're set up. I'm now ready to record an awesome guitar solo or something. Of course, there are two ways to record audio. There wouldn't be one way. This is FL Studio. There's two ways. There's what's called you can record directly into an audio editor stroke sampler plugin called Edison, which we'll have a look at in a minute. Or you can record directly into an audio clip in the playlist, which is what we're going to do now. Because, you know, I'm just like a normal person, and I like the idea of recording directly into the playlist, although that's probably not going to look quite like you think it should. So we're going to hit our record button, and then we're going to answer the really friendly question again. So what is it that we want to do? Well, we want to record audio into the playlist as an audio clip. So let's do that. Oh, well, it sort of throws you straight in without really thinking about it. Oh, so it's recording, so I need to be Now, you don't get any indication of something that's being recorded as you record, which is a real shame. I like that. I find that intensely useful because I can see that it's recording. I know that I've pressed all the right buttons and that I'm not clipping. And having a visual representation of that is, I find personally, very useful. So the fact that there isn't one is really annoying. But when you've finished, there it is. Here's my clip in the playlist in all its glory. I could have set up a metronome to play along to that. I could have set up some drums and played along to that, but I didn't. I did it all completely freeform. So this, of course, is not a track of recorded audio. It's just a clip into which I've recorded. So if I press that button, I can make some more of them. I could probably trim it a bit and then make another one. See? It's almost like it's got a delay going on. I could get rid of the original one. Ooh, wow. Well, okay, good. That's pretty straightforward. Now, what you may or may not have noticed, if we go back to the mixer for a second, is that this, it's not playing back on our channel 5. It's playing back purely on the master. But you think, but then why does it have the guitar effect on it? Well, that's because the guitar effect has been recorded directly to disc, because the recording happens right at the bottom of the channel after the inserts. And so I've essentially recorded with the effect onto the disc. And it doesn't have its own channel, so if I wanted it to have a channel, I'd have to double click it, go Control L, and it would put it in its own mixer channel. Okay, good. But what if I wanted to record it dry, like you normally would? Well, to do that is slightly different. Let's bring up the mixer again. So I want to do that. I have to put the effects somewhere else. So I'm going to start on a new channel 9 just to stop it being confusing. I'm going to arm it. No, I'm not going to arm it for recording. I'm going to specify an input. Go back to 5 and turn that off so I don't get confused. Go click on 9, input number 2. Okay, now I want to record at the bottom of that channel, so I don't want to put any effects in because otherwise they're going to be recorded. So what I then need to do is route this to another channel, let's say channel 10. Go to channel 10, put that, the distortion hardcore thing in. Let's go for chill out. Okay, let's use that. Go back to the playlist, get rid of that. Go back to my mixer. Channel 9, that's the one I want to record. So I'm going to hit record again. What do I want to do? Into a clip. And now, go back to our playlist. There it is, nice and recorded. If I play that back, it's completely dry. And it's completely dry because it's not going back through the channel that I recorded. So what I actually want to do is then select that insert that I've just used and put that into channel 10. So now that audio track is playing back through the effect that I put on before when I was performing it and recording it. That seems a little bit messy. I mean, this is one of those situations where the rigidity of normal DAWs, where you have track and you have mixer channel, perhaps they seem to make more sense in this situation. But you know, the flexibility is amazing, but it does mean that you sometimes have a bit more work to do to get normal simple things to happen. But on the plus side of this way of doing things, that I only have to select one channel and have one channel set up for recording, say number 9, and I can do recording after recording after recording, and they all end up as separate clips in separate places, and I can then route those to wherever I want. So the ease of recording is amazing, but it does take a little bit of work to sort it all out and work it all out afterwards. Right, let's get to grips with Edison then. Edison is a plugin. You'll find it here under plugins, under miscellaneous Edison. It's weirdly named, a weirdly thing. It's kind of what it is. It's like a hardware sampler. It works in those sort of ways, has those sorts of tools and those sorts of functionality. And so you plug it into an insert and it records at that insert. So it could be before a bunch of effects, or you could put it at the bottom after a bunch of effects. The choice is yours. And with Edison, the audio is recorded into RAM. It's not recorded onto the disc, and so it's best suited for shorter bits of audio, you know, as if you were sampling. And you've got a whole bunch of sort of old school tools in here, like normalization, trimming, adding reverb, EQ, all processing on the audio, not as plugins. So, you know, auto slicing, noise removal, glitch removal, all the sort of things that you would like to use when dealing with samples. You can also load samples directly into Edison and process them in there if you want, and have them kind of play back from an instrument, although not really in an instrument. To do that, you would send the sample from Edison into the plugin sampler and play it that way, which is pretty cool. But Edison allows you to do that, to bring in the audio, manipulate it, play with it, mess it about, and then stick it in a sampler for playback. There's a whole stack of stuff in there, but what it's particularly good at is loop recording. So let's set up a quick 4-bar loop and show Edison playing alongside it. Record. Okay, here we go. So it's going round, it's already recording, and this time Edison does show you what's happening as it's happening. So if I play something, you get lovely wave shapes. Lovely wave shapes. Why can't we have that in the clip playlist thing? I don't know. But anyway, each time it reaches the end of the loop, you get a line, a marker showing you where that is. So you can very easily play properly in this bit. So let's give that a go. So I'm out of sync already, anyway, it doesn't matter. Okay, right, that'll do. And now when you press stop, it instantly starts playing the whole thing back. But let's have a look at this. So if we select between one of our loop bits here, we can set that playing. And we can actually move to the different bit with the arrow keys here, moving along. And then the neat thing is that you go to your playlist here, and I use one of these buttons up here, this one I believe, drag sample, and I can drag the selected bit, see it gets dragged onto the playlist. And there she blows. And if I like, I can bring this back over here, select another part of the song, and you think you can drag from there, but you can't. You have to press that button and drag from it, and I can stick another one in. So you can record a whole different bunch of takes into the Edison and pull out the ones you want to use, or mix and match the ones you want to use. It's really, really easy. It's a very sort of extraordinarily useful way of recording audio, even if it feels a bit sort of initially quite clumsy. I'm not quite sure what I'm doing or what's going on, but the sort of the power and versatility that gives you, particularly when trying out, say for instance, trying out vocals on a loop, or trying out a guitar lick and trying to get that bit right. In other DAWs, you tend to end up with these sort of tracks upon tracks upon tracks of sort of folded takes, and you do all this comping to get that together. Whereas this is more of a straightforward way of doing that, and then picking out the sort of loops that you like. It's really interesting and unexpected. It's not something that I expected to find in Fruity Loops. So that is more or less FL Studio 12, or the gist of it, I suppose. I mean, we've looked at some pretty basic bits and pieces, and it probably hasn't sounded fantastic because we haven't really looked at any big sort of... Oh, wait, there's performance mode. Now, we haven't looked at performance mode. This is a whole nother mode within Fruity Loops which lets you perform with the playlist. And that will give me an opportunity just to show you the sort of sounds that it can make. And I'm going to stick this on the touchscreen, and we'll have a quick groove with that. So performance mode, let me put this away. I thought we'd move over to the Surface Pro 3 for the section on multi-touch. Well, FL Studio 12 has made quite a bit of noise about their multi-touch support, and it's great to see it finally being implemented in somewhere that's interesting. Well, that was a journey. As a total FL Studio virgin, I felt I really had to dig deep to pull out as much of the interesting stuff as I could, and so some of what I've been talking about has been pretty basic. There's also loads of stuff I haven't talked about yet. There's the arpeggiator, there's stamping, there's strumming, there's the way you can extract a piano roll straight from an audio file. I mean, every single function and window seems to have umpteen different menus and further depth you can go to, and parameters and changes and bits and pieces that there's just no time to look at. There's no doubt that FL is focused on pattern and loop based music making, and whenever I start to turn my nose up at that, because I'm a very sort of sensitive and freeform kind of guy, man, I have to remind myself that actually all my music is pattern based. It's all based on loops essentially, with choruses and verses and all that kind of thing. And actually FL Studio is an awesome place to do that kind of music, which is kind of everybody's kind of music. The vector interface is smooth and slick. I like the way all that moves about. The way that FL incorporates a dozen different ways of working is one of its real strengths, but also it's kind of a weakness because at times the interface can seem a bit messy and incoherent. The overall workflow though, the drag and drop, the plug-in picker, and the way of painting patterns is enormously efficient and easy to use. So if the blank page of most DAWs leaves you a bit sort of cold and intimidated, then I really would recommend checking out FL Studio 12. It comes with a huge sound palette and a way of working that's a load of fun while at the same time being totally capable of producing professional results. So there you are, I hope that's been interesting. So join us again when very soon we're going to be looking at PreSonus Studio One 3. So that should be fun. So yeah, and subscribe, follow us on Twitter, come and talk to us on Facebook. Whatever you like, just get involved and we'll see you very soon.